brought to you by Irish Rugby Tours, the Rugby Tour Specialists, AFIA Sports Training, committed to developing the sporting potential of future players in the US, UK, and across the world. And Dub Pies, Down Under Pies. Stop by, say hi, and eat pie. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up here at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in Midtown Manhattan, talking rugby. And in the studio with me is none other than Daniel Craig lookalike, Mark Griffin, and Mr. Kiss Lensing, who is going to be playing prop for Rugby United New York this time next year in the studio. And I'm gentlemen, it's been a great day so far of rugby. So, and I know you guys have schedules, so let's get right to it. Mark, you're leaving us. You're going to, you're almost gone already. You're handling two jobs right now. Play Rugby USA job that you aptly handled and developed over the years, and you're now with USA Rugby, and you're going to transition somebody into your position at Play Rugby USA, right?
Correct. Yes. Leaving us as in New York, not leaving rugby, and certainly
he's been in tears though.
Yeah, well, we're both body doubles, right?
Yes.
You're the prop, and I'm the Daniel Craig body double. But I'm moving out to Denver at some point in Q1 with the new USA Rugby role, and we're doing really well with regard to the Play Rugby succession plan, executing that, and the transition of my role as well.
Well, there will definitely be tears when you leave Play Rugby USA. It's going to be a party, I would imagine, a going away party. Bittersweet. I might be just talking for me. I don't know about you. You've put in a lot of time. You've certainly earned an opportunity to go someplace else. You've changed lives. You've built this thing into something that can probably survive. But your passion got this thing going.
Yeah, and for me, it's the passion that's driving me through to the new role as well. When you leave a commercial role, I've been in banking for 9 years, nearly 10 years, and you need to leave for something you're passionate about. And for me, it's always been about making impact. And through Play Rugby, obviously, that was about providing this rugby opportunity to young people, inspire them, empower them, and help them develop those skills they need to realise their potential. But I'm equally as passionate about having an impact on the growth of rugby in America. And one of the critical pieces, obviously, we need to grow the game in the US is revenue. And we need to fuel the pathways that I was talking about earlier, fuel the performance, to give the coaches and the athletes the resources they need to be successful, and ultimately to fuel the participation at the base as well. And I'm as passionate about that actually as I am about the impact that rugby can have on young people. And I know that at the USA Rugby role, there's an opportunity actually to do both, and that's what's really exciting.
All right, but walk me in off the ledge, because I've been down this road, as have other USA Rugby fans, where we have had the promise of going forward and raising money and making it right. We've had Strat 2020. What is the difference now? What's it going to be? Is there a plan? Is it going to be great, or is it going to be Strat 2020 on a website and then really nothing coming forward out of it?
The first thing I'd say, and I think Ross summed this up well when he was on with you a month or so ago, was you've got to start anything with new people, right? And so I think you've got to look at the current reality of the situation we're in, which is obviously for poor execution of something that was very well intentioned, things got very, very close to the edge of the cliff. And subsequent to that, actually still managed to pull off an incredibly successful Rugby World Cup, sevens obviously, and work through transitions that have been very challenging, through which now we're into the home straight. And so Ross obviously is on board leading the charge, and he's exactly the right person to do that, with all the rugby experience he's got and the relationships that he's developed, and just the knowledge of global rugby within which we have to sit. Eric, obviously, that's come on from the soccer world with a ton of experience, helping bolster up Eric Gleason, as CFO, and then they've brought myself in the commercial sphere as well. In the interim, specifically just to embrace the partnerships that we have, but on the long term to redefine how we establish partnerships. And so I'd say
you mean with sponsors and advertisers and
and so you start with the people, and so there's been obviously some changes at USA Rugby, as you know, and there'll probably end up being some additional changes over time, as there is in any team or organisation. But then you look at where you're at now, right, and then define where you want to be. And we first and foremost need to look at the purpose of USA Rugby and just look at the work that's been done there, and really, really clearly define that and use that as our anchor for moving things forward, and position rugby where we can compete, right? And we can't compete for eyeballs, and we can't compete for the big brands and the all of this traditional sort of media marketing things that every sponsor wants. We will provide those, but we're never going to differentiate on those, right? We have to differentiate based on the things that people are passionate about with rugby, and what's the overlap between that and certain things that corporations are passionate about. And so you look at the overlay of the purpose there, you look at some of the values and how you can develop a narrative around that and design a partnership and ideally a business model around that as well. And so we're just taking a different approach going forward. Obviously it's going to be a period of time of transition to be able to sort of really start making significant progress there. But the most important thing is I think we've got buy-in. We've got a plan in terms of a working group to restructure some of the governance and things to make those more aligned and efficient than they probably are currently, and ultimately some new people to drive it forward.
So Namibia, did you guys have a solid union? Did you have financial support? And are you familiar with this enough to make a comparison between the two at this point?
No, not at all. The biggest problem in Namibia.
Not at all. You didn't have finances or resources.
No, we don't have the economy that's at the moment available in America. That's the biggest issue in Namibia. We have 2 million people.
Yeah.
Of 1/3 of the country is desert. So
I have 2 million people in my building.
So for us, it's a totally different scenario. And then we also was a problem. I think it's now with World Rugby also have a lot more influence after, I think, the previous World Cup. They came in and Phil Davis is now involved there, and Phil's doing a great job with them. We got a new CEO, and things is a little bit looking up for the next World Cup. But in the previous couple of years, we had a lot of fluctuation about just the Namibian Rugby Union, who's in charge, and
was it mismanagement, corruption, or just not amateurs running an organization?
Yeah, the biggest thing is because we didn't have any private funding, because of there was companies that wanted to fund us in Namibia, but there was like mismanagement of funds. And then what happened is, so companies don't want to give money, and then they only rely on World Rugby money. And that money, you only get a very small portion for a Tier 3 country every year just to maintain your country. And then as soon as you qualify for the World Cup, then there's more money.
Right.
And that was where the challenge every time came. So as soon as the money comes, then there's people jumping out of holes that you've never seen for 2 years. And they climb on board, and everyone works very aggressively, and there's new coaches and new everything. But then as soon as the World Cup is finished, the money is gone, and it goes into like in hibernation again for 2-3 years. And the guys who's passionate about the sport had to fight and keep the game alive and work really hard, and then qualified again as soon as we qualified.
Same stuff.
Yeah, and that was a big challenge for Namibia, because over the years, every 4 years before World Cup, we needed to start new. Every time there was nothing that we could build on the previous World Cup, on previous World Cups, new coaches, new management, but World Rugby is busy sorting it out. So it's a totally different scenario than here. Like I said, here's much more funding. I think there's way more players here.
And you're coming in here at a good time, really. I mean, we've had a mess, but he's coming in. There's a professional setup in Major League Rugby. You've got some changeover at USA Rugby. What is your title specifically?
Commercial director.
Are you the first?
No, not technically. No, I think there's been a couple of different people in this role or similar roles historically with USA Rugby. Most latterly, obviously, there was people engaged at RIM, which is the commercial entity. I'm currently, just to be clear, because you're going to ask the question, I'm currently engaged by RIM, but I report directly to Ross and work directly with all of the team at USA Rugby. So I've essentially replaced the people that were at RIM. which was the commercial entity and now is becoming a commercial department within USA Rugby.
So it's going from the for-profit partner to a for-profit department?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's complicated because there's an actual entity there and
Yeah.
there's shareholders there and everything else. And there's a board meeting on October 19th. And until that meeting's reached a conclusion on the definitive structure, will be that there's been verbal agreement to date. We won't be able to exactly kind of announce what that is. But for all intents and purposes, from the outside looking in, there will remain a shell entity that no one will really see. And I will be operating a commercial department within USA Rugby. But there are legalities around having an entity still in place that makes sense for USA Rugby, makes sense for the shareholders of that entity as well. And ultimately, there's alignment in terms of where the boards are at with both of those entities, that we're looking at the whole and not trying to differentiate between one or the other. Because what's important is that there is complete alignment, and that whichever way it happens, USA Rugby ultimately needs to generate commercial revenue, and it needs people to do that. And so, it needs, most importantly, those people to be doing that directly for the benefit of USA Rugby, and that's exactly what this will be.
We got to break for a quick commercial. Just don't go anywhere, guys.
Been blind since I was 4, and I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste. And my beer's Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
Ladies and gentlemen, this week's Rugby Wrap-Up Team of the Week is not a team. It is actually an organization. It's Play Rugby USA. Thank you, Mark Griffin. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in New York City, talking rugby with Mr. Mark Griffin and Mr. Kiss Lensing. Mark, are you afraid at all that the reputation that you have built for yourself out of hard work and the success of Play Rugby USA and the changing of lives, that because you have great relationships with sponsors because of the work that you've done, are you afraid that that might get tarnished going into this?
No, conversely, the complete opposite, in fact. I'll be able to bring relationships to USA Rugby and also a different approach. And, I think one of the big differentiators for us going forward is actually taking some of the concepts that have enabled Play Rugby to be successful and integrating those into some of USA Rugby's programs. So we can actually engage some commercial partners in programs very similar to Play Rugby USA, that Play Rugby USA would never be able to run across the country anyway. And I think that you start positioning rugby in that way as a vehicle that can actually provide transformative experiences for everybody.
Wait,
right?
You're saying Play Rugby USA couldn't run across the country in the sense that it's mainly for inner city programs, or
No, just pure lack of capacity, right? And so at Play Rugby, I wouldn't even have had the bandwidth really to get access to the level of people within some of the brands that you would need to be able to have the right conversation, and nor would Play Rugby have had the capacity to be able to deliver the scale of partnership that those corporations would need and want. USA Rugby does, and Play Rugby has some of the know-how of how to do that, and that's just one example. I think the other way of looking at this is looking at the corporations and what is it the corporations are looking to achieve right now. Now, you'll see some of the leading corporations in the world very clearly now, genuinely and authentically define their purpose, right? And so you can look at DHL as a rugby sponsor is about connecting people. UL, who's a current, obviously, big partner for USA Rugby, is about empowering trust. And there's some clear overlaps there with things that we can do in the rugby space, that we can actually build something that's directly aligned with our purpose and directly aligned with their purpose, and still give all the bells and whistles that we can give, that will never compete with the big professional leagues, but we're differentiating us based on what we can actually provide, which is this experience around rugby that's actually better than any other experience you can have, and that we can sell. And so we're just defining that right now. We're bouncing that off different corporate partners, and we're having a really good iterative dialogue with them to get their feedback, so that we can start positioning things based on what they need and want, that also delivers what we need and want. And that's what the definition of partnership is, that we add value to each other. And that's where we've missed the boat a little bit in the past with more contractual relationships, not true partnerships.
You're obviously got to go out there and solicit some sponsorships, some deals, some partnerships. Are you finding that they're not answering the calls now that you're wearing the USA Rugby logo rather than the Play Rugby USA Rugby logo, or are they willing to listen to you more because you've had the relationship?
They're willing to listen to me, firstly, because I'm representing the national governing body. They will listen to me partly because of my experience, although a lot of them wouldn't probably know who I am or even be familiar with Play Rugby USA. But first and foremost, representing the national governing body is the biggest opportunity we have, and I have obviously now, to really have that dialogue at the C-level suite, the CMO sort of level, and the heads of global sponsorships, that is much harder to have in a smaller charity, and enables us to design things that can have an impact on a national level. And I realise I can't give you any examples right now because I've only been in the role for a few months. Yeah, well, but I can tell you, just at Rugby World Cup Sevens, I had 25 meetings that week. Wow. I've had at least another 20 meetings subsequent to that, and we've probably got between 20 and 30 different organisations that we're sort of looking at, of which 50% of them we're in discussions with, right? We're not got any deals done yet, but we're having some very, very positive dialogue, and that's a really important start.
Yeah, because I've been around this American rugby landscape long enough to know I've seen the facial expressions on potential sponsors rolling their eyes. Big sponsors when dealing with USA Rugby, and I think I might be naive here, so don't jump down my throat. I think it's changing. I think
it's, of course, and ultimately, I keep coming back to this sort of word experience, but to me, if you think about what it is, why you love rugby, why you're involved, right? I said this at a conference a few weeks ago, that to me it just sort of comes down to better people and better experiences. We kind of expect more out of each other as rugby players. We expect the rugby experience to be that much better than it is in other sports, and just something special about it that we can all probably define. And we've got to work out what that is, but in two simple terms, it's a better experience. Yeah. Now, if we can treat every single stakeholder better than they get treated in other areas, and differentiate that based on some of the key pieces we have of rugby, and provide them an experience with our coaches and with our players or with our kids, that's something that they can't get in other sports. That's how we position rugby differently, right?
And here's one thing I want to point out. You bring up the term stakeholder, right? I want to lobby for the membership and the fan out there that we are the membership and the fans. We are stakeholders.
100%.
Right? So we've
100%.
kind of been ignored, or the second citizens, and I think that's backwards.
Yeah. Now I can, I'm not going to share the document because I literally received it today internally, but there's a document circling around the leadership of USA Rugby right now that helps provide us with some sort of operating guidelines just for the next 12 to 15 months, while we're rebuilding, while we're getting the current reality foundation put in place, while we're going to engage people in the strategic planning process that needs to go much longer term, right? Probably through to 2028 Olympics, or whatever year you think we may end up wanting to host a World Cup, whether that's 27 or 31. So you've got to start taking that long-term view and working back strategically. But in the meantime, you need a sort of an operating plan that is going to be at least aligned to some of that long-term potential. And one of the key pieces in there is the membership. And I've talked about stakeholder experiences. That talks about membership experiences. Members obviously are stakeholders. Players are stakeholders. Coaches are stakeholders. And players all the way up to national team, right? Corporate partners are stakeholders. Vendors are stakeholders. Donors are stakeholders. Everybody's a stakeholder. And that's the business of non-profit 101.
Yeah. Well, you're a stakeholder as a member of the MLR and Rugby United New York. How soon before we see a Play Rugby USA kid playing for the MLR?
4.5 years.
Okay,
That's pretty good. I mean, just to be able to say that,
yeah.
to have a landscape now where a guy like you can come in, you have a potential. There's youth rugby being played. There's inner city rugby being played and changing lives. You've got the MLR. You've got the APCs, which are going on now. All this different stuff we didn't have.
Yeah.
We didn't have, and you're getting to see this firsthand.
I think there's already kids that coming through the Play Rugby that's already exposed to the sevens tournaments.
Sure.
So it's definitely working, and it's just that ground floor work that we need to do first and get that in place. And again, like on the stakeholders, just wanted to say something on that is that experience that we as rugby players, rugby coaches, and the fans, the parents, everyone, that vibe that we need to put out there to grow the game.
Right.
We need to keep that as positive as possible, as the most positive way as possible.
Yep.
So, and that will also pull the advertisers in, the sponsors. Now,
True. And 4.5 years, realistically, actually, is probably for kids that are graduating our program now.
Yeah.
We've obviously got players off in college now. We've got Shifty down in Buenos Aires right now with the Youth Olympics, which is
Awesome.
incredible. But we've got Hercules and other players at college now that are legitimate players that if they come back to New York,
So some of them in Lake
or
Placid,
wherever they
Yeah,
end up,
yeah.
they might end up in either at Rooney or one of the MLR teams for sure.
All right, when Congressman Steve Lewis slams his fist on the table with a harumph and says, "I want to see a plan. When's the plan coming out?" When is the plan coming out?
He's going to be part of it. So there was a working group formed at the last Congress meeting, which is looking at all of the governance aspects from obviously board to Congress, defining very clearly the roles that we want there and what they're there to represent, so that Congress is there to represent membership. But the whole structure of membership's changed over the last 10 years or 12 years since the Congress and board was last formally restructured, right? So working from board to Congress to specifically defining the types of people and the types of roles you need there to represent the organisation on behalf of all the stakeholders and to represent the Congress on behalf of the members, and taking that all the way down into the next steps, which is then what's the strategy and so on and so forth. There'll be other people involved in the strategy as well. But that working group is going to be the glue between all the current governance pieces. And so Steve will be able to answer that question as well as I would be able to.
Time frame?
For a strategic plan?
Yeah.
I think that our goal was to do that by mid of next year. So by summer of next year, there would be a strategic plan in place. And anyone that's been involved with strategic plans knows if you're looking to do it very transparently as we are, obviously, and to get as much feedback from people as we can, that takes time.
Yeah.
And we're not looking to reinvent the wheel either. There was a lot of work done in 2020, in the 2020 plan, and there's other strategic plans from very well-established national governing bodies around the world and from other sports that we're looking at. So we're not reinventing the wheel here, but we do want to make sure that everybody's had input to that plan and to that process. And in the meantime, we're working on quick wins and making sure we're stepping forward in the right direction.
So who's your successor going to be?
I can't say who the successor is, but I can say that we had 46 applications. We had a search committee involving 3 different board members and myself, and then ultimately my senior staff that were involved as well. Interviewed 12 people via phone interviews, down to 3, down to 2. And we just received unanimous board approval from all of the board members of Play Rugby to hire someone to replace me, and I'm very, very excited about who that person is and about what they're going to be able to achieve with the senior team that we've developed over the last couple of years at Play Rugby to really take things forward in a great, exciting direction for the organisation.
I know you can't give us the name right now, but will you come back with that person on the show?
I'd love to do that.
Excellent. On that note, Mr. Mark Griffin, Mr. Kies Lensing, I'm Matt McCarthy for Rugby Wrap Up at the Fantasy Sports Network Studio 34 in New York City, signing off.